we're going to be talking about challenges, Janet. How interesting is that? I'd like to remind everybody that what you hear here is our opinion. So please refrain from taking our chatting is not meant to replace any legal, medical, nor professional advice, nor your own sound judgment. So listen, please participate by coming across and watching on Angel Heart Radio Facebook page, because we love the interaction with our audience. And then, yes, be discerning. Does this sit right for me? Is it another point of view? Because we all have points of view, don't we, Janet?
Yes, we do.
And it's so important that we look at our own points of view and value our own points of view. And they can change from time to time.
Yep. And we should be able to value other people's points of view as well, noting that it just helps us, complete the tapestry of humanity here on the planet.
That's right.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what I'm doing here. No, we don't want to do that. I've got something on my screen that I'd like to get rid of. There we are.
I can't tell if you're recording either.
Sorry?
Are you recording?
I do believe so.
Yep, maybe. I can't tell. It doesn't let me see that. But if you are, great.
We are.
Perfect.
Yes, so that's really cool. If somebody is watching, they can all certainly tell us that too. Yes. Well, see, challenges.
Well, Mercury's retrograde, so technology challenges would not be totally uncalled for or unsurprising, in any way. I'm never shocked.
My goodness. Well, I hope people are getting a good laugh this morning, because laughter is really important, especially when we're feeling stressed. So often we forget, we go down the rabbit hole, but and forget to laugh. Oh, how important is laughter? Janet, I don't know about you, but every so often via Messenger, not so much on emails these days, it's more Messenger, but somebody will either put up a joke or a funny cartoon or whatever, and I always thank them for the laugh, because it's really important.
Right. Humor, the best medicine. Or laughter, the best medicine. That used to be a Reader's Digest column, and it was filled with little anecdotal things that made you laugh, or little jokes. It was a great regular part of the Reader's Digest, if you remember, way back when we actually read magazines in person.
Well, that's true. Held them. Gee, Reader's Digest, that's going way, way back, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'd like to welcome, Carol Ann Cross for joining us, Ursula O'Farrell, thank you, and Debbie.
Hello, Debbie, Ursula, and Carol Ann.
How wonderful. Of course, Carol Ann has a show coming up later this morning, probably about an hour and a half. Yes, an hour and a half after we finish. And I do believe today it's a very special show, because she is doing it with Gabby Forrester. And Carol Ann and Gabby have a show now on Enlightened World Network, and every fortnight. And today they're on Angel Heart Radio, because Anaya is having lunch with her daughter, whose birthday is tomorrow. So Isn't that wonderful how everything flows beautifully?
It does, yes. And I remember Gabby's name because she's requested charts from me before, and I think she's been in the Facebook group talking to us during the show sometimes, right? Is that the same Gabby?
That's right. That is the same Gabby.
Yeah.
Isn't it interesting how, yes, the universe brings us together in so many different ways.
Right.
And there's Gabby. Well done.
Perfect timing, Gabby.
Fantastic. All right. Well, I'm wondering whether our audience has been experiencing challenges, because last month, Janet, you said that we were in for some challenging times, and you have been proved correct.
Indeed. I think the way that I tried to put it is that we might be challenged. There could be surprises, upsets, things we didn't expect to have happen. And of course, on a daily basis, it seems those kinds of things are happening I hear about it through different people associated with my morning show, with friends, family. And of course, I see it splashed on the news. I mean, who would have thought that the Pope would say that it was okay to have civil unions between homosexual people? I would never have, in a million years, I could have hoped for it, but I would never have expected that that would happen with the Catholic Church. But there it is, right? They're moving along with the times. And that was something I think that was kind of, it wasn't shocking perhaps, but, or maybe shocking in a good way, right? Sometimes there are shocks that are very positive, and other times there
Right.
are shocks that are, not so positive. And I think we've all had a couple different experiences that way. I got to tell you guys, this was so funny last night. Here where I live, we rarely get thunderstorms. Rarely. I mean, I can probably count on my, two hands the number of times that's happened over the last, I don't know how many years I've lived in this state. And more than 20, 25, 30, long time,
Wow.
right? My youngest son just turned 29. So gosh, 32 years probably. So
Mm-hmm.
so really it's rare. Well, I was in the middle of a dream last night, just about to get a piece of doggone information out of the dream, when all of a sudden I see this in the dream, this big flash, and I'm thinking it's part of the dream, but immediately that was followed by a crack, a boom, and a clap of thunder so loud that literally everything in my house was shaking. I woke up. I was wondering if it was an earthquake, if it was thunder, or what it was. And then after that, it just sort of rolled away. It was definitely thunder. I could hear other claps and see other flashes, but it was funny how the flash was in my dream and then the thunder was in my reality, and makes you wonder, like, what is the reality, the dream or the thing that we think is real? So
Mm-hmm.
and that's, an example of a shock that is maybe not so unpleasant, certainly scary in the moment until you realize what's going on. But I've heard from other people with other big shocks that have been going on in their lives, relationship upsets, losing jobs, getting new jobs, just, it's almost like the universe is exposing everything in our world that we haven't dealt with completely. And
Absolutely.
from that, it's sort of like it comes up out of the dark or the underworld. And of course, a lot of that is because we have Pluto in Capricorn and Saturn and Jupiter as well, finishing their transits up through Capricorn, which has been the deconstruction and leading us to a reconstruction in our whole entire world, our globe,
Mm-hmm.
and in ways that we can't even predict at this point, right? We don't
Yeah.
know, and there's still that element of we don't know that is evident all the way through the rest of the year. And next month, when you and I get together, we're going to take a quick look at 2021. And I know there's going to be a lot of hopeful people that think we're going to be done with all of this. And likely we will not. We will
No.
enter a different phase of this, possibly the reconstruction phase. I'm not sure what that's going to look like yet. I can
Mm.
guess. And I can guess that it's going to be a lot of economic impact over the next year or two. Um, but my goodness, think of what we've been through already in this year. It's like I almost feel like I can take on anything at this point in time, not to test the universe and have you try my hand at that, but really we've come through so much. So, my advice for everybody in the coming days as they wind up to an election here in the US and
Mm.
to a Mars retrograde change of direction and ultimately Mercury changing direction, which always tend to disrupt, right? Planets, when they change direction, they disrupt things. A full moon on Halloween that is
Mm.
unbelievably powerful, that'll bridge into your November 1st. I think I
Right.
checked the date for Sydney and Melbourne. It was at 1:49 a.m. on November 1st for you all. But for the rest of us, we are all experiencing it on Halloween. Kind of extraordinary because it's the second full moon of the month, called a blue
Right.
moon, and it happens to be highly
Whoa.
charged. Highly charged.
Whoa.
Yeah. So
I'd like,
go
sorry,
ahead.
Janet.
No,
I'd
go ahead.
like to welcome Nikki, who says good evening.
Hi,
So
Nikki.
she's obviously somewhere other than where I am. and 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 Debbie made a comment because she had just been talking about the Pope's sanction, if you like, and she
Sanction.
was
There it is.
going
That's a good word.
shock.
Yeah.
So amazing things are happening. And I do believe from what we have this wonderful woman here in Australia, JCK, and she had a download about 5 or 6 weeks ago. And she's doing incredible things, being able to share what might be happening. And Janet, you were talking about your dream and, what was reality and what wasn't. And that's the message of JCK, for us to have a
Oh,
look at, what appears to be real. Is it real? Fascinating.
yeah. I just hate that feeling though of getting ready to get some kind of download or some kind of information, and then this big flash of light that totally pulls you out of it, and you're like, oh, how do I get back there? And you never get
Right.
back to the same place. I rarely do anyway.
That's
So
true.
it was kind of crazy that way. But maybe I wasn't meant for that knowledge yet. Maybe it was just a message of craziness to come. Who knows?
Mm. Who does know? Now,
Yeah,
Nikki's in the UK. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It is evening there. And
definitely.
Gabby's saying that she's really affected by moon energy. And I
Mhm.
see lots of people are, aren't they? Especially at full moon.
Yeah. Interesting because the moons themselves are very powerful and they affect everybody. But sometimes people aren't aware of how the moon is
Mm,
actually affecting them. They attribute what they're feeling to a bad mood or a bad day in the office or something exciting that's happened, but they don't really tune in to the moon unless they're really, triggered to do that by an astrology broadcast or something that they happen to read or see. For me, I always love being able to go outside and visualize with the moon what's
mhm,
happening. And the moon itself, very powerful. I mean, think about the
mm,
moon. It's the opposite of the sun, really, and holds so much of the emotion and the memories of our human life and our genetics and the soul's energy locked up in the moon and the divine feminine, the energy of going quiet and going within versus the masculine part of the sun. So it's the perfect balance. So the moon is very important. And that's one of the reasons why every day I pretty much pay attention to the moon. What sign is it in? What's it hitting? Other as far as other planets go, so that I can kind of get a read on what to expect. Right
right.
there's sometimes I'm not so good at realizing how it affects me personally, but at other times when I know what's happening through the moon, I'm so grateful that I have that knowledge because now I get why I'm feeling what I'm feeling or why what's happened has happened. So, um,
Excellent.
yeah,
Gabby says that she definitely notices it and she gets quite unsettled at times, but she loves sitting under the moon. It is so
yeah,
powerful. Mm.
yes, yes, yes. I'm hoping uh, to have clear skies for the 31st ish so I can see
Mhm.
that moon. We don't often have that in October, but we'll see what happens. I'm open to that. But the moon in its fullness is on Halloween, but we have 2 or 3 big things happening before that, between today, where we're sitting,
Right.
and that full moon of next, what is that, next Saturday? The
Mhm.
first will be on the next week, the 27th, which is Tuesday, my Tuesday, your Wednesday, when Mercury in retrograde in Scorpio right now makes it backward into Libra. So for a short time, right? A short time, we get out of the deeper intensity of that Scorpio water emotional energy and back to sort of the air energy of Libra, being able to see more about what we really cherish in our relationships and seeing ourselves more clearly. And then about 4 minutes after Mercury moves back into Libra, Venus moves into Libra. So it's almost like two of the inner planets at that point want to remind us through Venus in particular about how when we're aligned with our values and we are expressing unconditional love, that
Mm.
any challenge can be met and moved through or overcome, however you want to look at that. So it's a great reminder as we get toward the end of October, but before that full moon, that's so tricky, that if we are in the energy of love and unconditional love, especially, that we can meet anything, right? That it's just a blip on our screen and we can just move right through it.
That's a nice reminder, isn't it? Because really, Janet, when we can live in unconditional love, life appears easier.
Yeah, it does. And, it's simple, really, if you just remind yourself in the heat of the moment, or as soon as you get through the initial whatever emotion that got triggered in you in that moment, it's an easy way to return back to love just by saying, uh, what is the highest and best that outcome from this event, or what is the most loving thing I can do right now? What is the most loving thing I can focus on right now? Just as a little trigger to get you back into that heart and mind alignment. Otherwise, your mind could take off and start wandering through the forest, through the desert, through, through the unknown territory, and take you into all kinds of places that feel not so good compared to if you stay in that loving energy. And one last transit that same week before we get to the Halloween full moon is Jupiter in an inconjunct. And I'll explain what that is in a minute, to the North Node, or to our collective destiny, if you will. And right now, so an inconjunct is just another word for a relationship between the two planets. It is a 150-degree angle or relationship, and it often confers some irritability, some need to adjust, right? There's like maybe something blocking our path forward. Something's just not quite right. So we're looking how we can bring things back into a balance or a harmony. Sometimes it requires us to sacrifice something, like a vision. Maybe we had this vision of how we thought something was going to work or what something was going to be. And in an inconjunct, we're faced with the maybe unsustainable nature of what that desire is, and we have to change our minds, right? We have to adjust, we have to sacrifice sometimes. Jupiter is a planet that represents our growth and our expansion, our optimism, our faith in a benevolent world. And the North Node in Gemini at this point is teaching us all about the power of communicating with one another, being positive in that communication, being curious about the world around you, and following the different strands of things as they come up. And it could be anything literally that just triggers your wanting to know more. Maybe it's about wanting to know more about a certain culture, or a certain movement, or a person. Maybe you get curious about a person and you start to broaden your horizons. But sometimes in that process we have to let go of what I usually call our sacred cows, right? Those beliefs that we have, that that's other and not me, and therefore no good, right? No good. But when you start to live your life that way, it creates more and more separation. And it's certainly not the most loving thing to do, or the most loving way to be. So
Mm.
these are what I think are the preparatory steps. And maybe I should be just mostly throwing that out there to people who are listening in the USA, because the next big thing, that full moon on Halloween, is the sort of kick, if you will, to what happens November 3rd with the election here.
Right.
And the dominant transits of those days are going to be sort of the tags that are hanging off of that election for likely a pretty long period of time. So it's important for all of us to know we have the tools personally to stay above that fray, right? That's right. If you've voted and you've done your due diligence, you've put that ballot in, you've voted with your heart and your mind or your soul, whatever that is, then you've done your job, and the rest you're not going to be able to control. So staying in love and staying in peace, that's going to be the best route for us. So any questions out there from anybody on those first few transits that we're completing in October?
Not at the moment, but you're putting it out there, Janet. So everybody, if you have questions,
feel free to ask.
We're certainly in a very, very interesting time in history.
Choke on that.
We've chosen to incarnate in a very interesting time.
Yes, we have. So now I'm going to talk about the full moon. And I also want to say that I did open up my programs for astrology and human design. So if someone has questions about their own chart, if we have time, I would be happy to look at that, especially the full moon. And if people want to know something else, I'm happy to do that as well. So the blue moon occurs 1:49 a.m. your time, 7:49. So wait a minute, let me back up because I'm doing the time zones backwards, of course. In the Pacific Coast, that new moon occurs at 7:49 a.m. on Halloween. So it's a fairly early morning new moon, full moon. And then 10:49 a.m. for those of you on the East Coast. Europe, I want to say that's going to be like 4 o'clock in the afternoon-ish, 4:30, 4:49. And then for you in Australia, it is going to be at about 1:49 a.m. on November 1st. And it doesn't take the power away from the punch of that new moon, of that full moon, though. So even though it doesn't fall on Halloween, you still are getting that punch. So think about this: the full moon. What does it represent for us in our lives? It is a time when the moon has come to its brightest, its biggest, and it is literally shining pretty much, the highest strength of its light reflected from the sun. And it is a time where we have energy in polar opposite signs. So the moon is going to be in Taurus, while the sun is in Scorpio at that point in time. So these are different signs completely, right? Taurus is about form, earth energy, right? It's very loyal energy. It kind of is a stubborn or dug in kind of energy. And then you have Scorpio on the other end where the sun is, that is very highly intense in terms of emotional connection, in terms of the depth to which they want to take things, highly passionate. So we have sort of two completely different energies that are vying for attention. So two parts of our lives that are coming into fullness, that are perhaps revealing something to us, and as the light of both luminaries is as powerful. And so we have completion, maybe we have an ending of some sort, and we certainly have a portal or gateway into new energy. Now, that's not just because it's a blue moon. This is every full moon offers us that kind of change or that kind of opportunity to become enlightened, if you will. So that's not new. But what is going on with this particular full moon is a couple of major transits or connections that the moon and the sun make to other planets that are kind of crazy. So let's talk about that. So first off, the moon is going to be in a degree that Dane Rudhyar, who is he was an astrologer who years ago wrote a book called The Astrological Mandala. And in it, there was an energy assigned to every degree of the zodiac. And the degree that the moon is going to be in for this particular full moon is all about having faith in the cyclic nature of renewal and destruction on the planet. So we get already this idea that what's turning over here, it's like, digging in and turning the dirt to bring some of the nutrients up to the surface. And even though it may, be difficult as a process to get through, it's definitely a powerful indicator of change. So here we
Mm-hmm.
have a degree that the moon will be at that tells us that renewal is on the way. But renewal often comes at a price, right? It comes at a
Mm-hmm.
price. Something gives way in order for renewal to occur. So something dies or
Sure.
passes out of existence for us to have something new. Then the degree that the sun is going to be sitting at is also interesting because it's about renewing or reversing. You could look at it too, the negative results of our social practices. So I was having a conversation with a friend today about fake news. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to share the experience that she was having or what happened exactly, but the experience in general was the news picked up the story of something that was happened in her family, and it was trash. It was totally
Mm.
not true. It was like they pick and chose the facts because maybe it was a slow news day and they just needed to, make it bigger than it was. And of course, we all know, we hear this all the time, about,
Absolutely.
right, fake
Magazines are
news.
full of made up stories, aren't they? That sadly people grab hold of.
Yeah, and it reminds me, like just the other night here in the US, the president had an interview with what was a prominent news broadcast, 60 Minutes. I don't know if you guys have that in Australia, but 60
Yeah.
Minutes,
Mm-hmm.
right? A news that I would have thought was in pretty good, standing. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but according to him, he's holding on to the recording that he made because he wants to see how off it is from what is the broadcast. So I'm kind of interested to see how that's going to play out because the
Sure.
social practices that we have in place and that we are all guilty of playing into is if it bleeds, it leads, right? So how many great news stories do you want to hear um, in general? Right, it's the stories of death and destruction and tragedy and somebody falls a fall from grace or something like that that seems to have been what has caught our attention in the past. So we get this opportunity with the sun in this particular degree to like find the nonsense in all of that, right?
Sure.
Right, and we're participating because we keep listening, right? We
Yes.
keep listening. And so those two energies together tell me that that's a big part of what's about to happen over these next couple of months, right? This
Mm-hmm.
idea of we can't trust what we're hearing outside of us. So what do we have to do? We have to move inward. We have to trust
Yes.
what we know on the inside. Now, the full moon, let's talk about the contacts it makes to other planets because the first one is huge. The full moon is in conjunction with Uranus,
Mm-hmm.
exact, like 8 degrees and 39 minutes for one of them, and 8 degrees, 41 minutes for the other. I mean, literally, they're on top of one another in space. They're really not literally on top of one another. Um, but when we have a conjunction of planets, it brings the full expression of both planets together to try to make a blend of these energies. Well, you can imagine the moon and its emotional connections and its more feminine energy meeting up with Uranus, the rebel, right? This is rebellion, revolution energy, liberating energy that it can make for a collective that feels a little bit restless, that feels anxious or anxiety about what's happening in the world, impatient. Let's just get through this.
Let's get it over.
Like, is it January 1st yet? No. Oh, damn. It's only
Yeah.
October 21st. Um, that can also lead us to feeling uncertain about uh, the world in general, about our family, about our jobs, about our money, about our health, all kinds of different things. And it doesn't help when we have conflicting news stories flying at us or who said what and who did what and what's true and what's not true. It's just this crazy time kind of exacerbated during this particular full moon. So it's certain to make us all feel a little bit uncertain and also unsettled, where we're
Mm.
just not sure that we're on solid ground. And if we are, is it going to suddenly open up and swallow us any minute? And expect then the unexpected events, change, erratic behavior by people, both, that we see splashed on the screens, but also in your own life, in your own family, maybe even in yourself, where you can't, one minute you're crying, the next minute you're laughing, the next minute you're, storming mad. So
Mm.
expect some of that erratic behavior and unexpected challenges as we begin this process of fully awakening. That's what this is about, really, in the bigger,
Yeah.
higher, level. We're awakening. But unfortunately, we're still humans and we're still moving through a lot of that that stuck energy. And of course, Uranus is in Taurus, right? That can be a stuck energy. It's fixed by nature. So it likes to hold its ground. It likes to be loyal, right? So questioning, what am I being loyal to and why, right? So
Right.
big questions to kind of unsettle all of us. Uh,
Big questions.
big questions.
Now, Pauline is saying hello, Janet,
Hi,
and
Pauline.
Shirley Rogers has joined us, which is lovely.
Hi,
Gabby
Shirley.
says you're blowing her mind. Everything is resonating.
Yes, I love that. So
And
go ahead.
sorry,
No, go ahead.
Ursula has a question at some stage. But
Okay.
if you,
Yeah. So Ursula, let me finish this thought
Mhm.
anyway, because I have an antidote. Wouldn't you like to know what the antidote is?
Oh,
Right?
yes,
There's an
please.
there's an antidote to all of this craziness. One, shut off your TV. Right? Don't I
Mm.
mean, unless you're watching Charmed or what is that? Gilmore Girls, some of those sappy things, turn off the TV, right? Be open-minded. Keep your mind not cluttered with a bunch of, but this is how it should be, or that's how that should be. And why is he doing that? Why is she doing that? Just stay open minded, open hearted, right? Remember going back to what was the precursors that we have experienced before that full moon? It's all about love. So be in love. Keep reminding yourself it's all about love. Be flexible. You cannot be rigid during this period of time. To do so would probably cause more anxiety and stress than to be flexible, to just kind of go with that flow. There is freedom and creativity available if we follow our inner knowing, right? This isn't the outer world is just one part that really we don't have a lot of control in, that we have as part of our experience. The other part is, well, what do I want to do now? Right? What do
Mm.
I want to do with this newly liberated time that I'm not spending watching the news? What am I going to do with that? And I'm sort of overblowing that. I know a lot of people already here aren't probably watching the news very often, having learned that lesson a long time ago. But what is it you want to be spending your time on now? What makes clear sense to your heart during this period of time that your mind may sit in rejection of, but your heart is really where you need to be? So does that make sense?
It does, yes. And I think,
Yeah.
like you, Janet, yes, I turned the TV off a long time ago. I know some people are thoroughly enjoying Netflix at the moment because they have extra time. And it is lovely, I believe, to get lost in something that
Yes.
we enjoy.
Yeah. Something that
Mm,
takes you away from it all,
mm, mm,
right? Um, there,
absolutely.
there are lots of different series and some great movies and things that uh, I watched. This most interesting Netflix. It wasn't on Netflix though. It was on Amazon, about light yesterday. And I turned it on because I was making dinner and I just wanted to hear noise in the background, but I got drawn in about light and it was fascinating. So, I mean, find something that really fulfills you, or fills you up, that makes you feel loved. Now, I don't want you to ignore your civic duties or to be aware, of what's going on in the greater world at large, but just don't get caught up in the ruckus of it all and all of that, because that leads to more of the stress. And there's
Sure.
another stressful aspect that's happening along with this full moon that we haven't yet addressed. I mean, I was just talking about the moon and the sun, but there's also Mercury, which on Halloween is still in retrograde. And at that full
Hold
moon is
on.
still in retrograde. And he'll be in a square, which is a challenge. This is a 90-degree relationship with the planet Saturn. And Mercury in a square to Saturn can be the bearer of not so good news. Notice I said not so good, not bad. Can be bad. There could be pessimism, there could be sadness, there could be anger, there could be upset. We can have the usual run-of-the-mill Mercury retrograde issues with travel or with the mail, so important here in the US since a lot of states have vote by mail, and we do here in Washington. We've done that for years, where we voted
Right.
by mail. And that can play into more of the disagreements about the mail and who voted when and blah, 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 right? So a lot there that can be started on Halloween before we even get to the election here in the US. So, antidote, be a full on listener, right? Be aware that you have ears for a reason, not just to hear, but to really listen to
Mm-hmm.
your inner voice, to what someone is telling you, to what you're hearing outside of you. I'm afraid that people during that period of time, that full moon window, can be easily offended by what someone says, then feel hurt or disrespected or isolated because they didn't really listen to what the conversation was. They just took away some kind of message and really didn't, complete the whole of the listening. Because even if you don't like what someone is telling you or someone is saying, there's some kind of kernel there of truth for you, or else that person would not be in your reality telling you this. So,
Sure.
paying attention and listening with an open heart to help keep us from getting into that really negative spread of energies there with Mercury in a square to Saturn. And of course, that transit is still highly activated on November 3rd, which happens to be the day that Mercury changes direction, moving to almost a stationary position, although it's really not. It just appears like it does that from our point of view in preparation to go back to forward momentum. And having that occurring on such a major election in any country,
Mm.
not just the US, but in any country, is like an open invitation for problems. So, lost ballots, or, I don't know.
Mm.
I can't even imagine what some of the problems might be. But again, it's not my job to sort that out. My job was to fill out my ballot and drop it in the mailbox. And that was my job, right? I can't
Right.
control what happens after that. So it's almost like Byron Katie, who always talks about in her books, what's my business, what's your business, and what's
Sure.
God's business, right? Where
Yep.
if you are in something else other than your own business, you're in the wrong place. And that's just going to breed some form of anxiety or upset because you can't control what's going on over there.
Mm.
All you can really control is how you are working with your own energy. So Mercury square Saturn, it just makes me go,
Mm.
So, and remember how powerful our minds are, right? And Mercury rules the mind and it rules communication. So the news out in the outer world may not be so good. It might not be very happy energy that we're experiencing, but we have the power to keep our minds focused on what we love, on what we desire, on where we're going, on the love that we feel for one another, on knowing unequivocally that the world is going to sort itself out. It's just going to sort
Absolutely.
itself out, right? Irregardless of how much I think I have to do to sort it out, the world will sort itself out over time. So pretty much that brings, us to the end of just one day, like one aspect, the full moon. Um,
Right.
Ursula had a question. Maybe I should answer that question if
Yes.
it's about the
Just
moon or.
Yeah, just before we get to that, Shirley Rogers was saying that her heart wants to travel. And
Mm,
I can put my hand up to that. And the thing is, we are fortunate in that we can watch travel documentaries, travel shows in this lull, because I know I'm going to be traveling again one day. It's not possible at the moment without a lot of inconvenience and cost. And Gabby watched I Am yesterday, and if you haven't seen it, watch it, is her advice.
Is that on, I think I have watched it, but is that on Netflix or Amazon?
I'm assuming that it possibly, yes, it would be Netflix.
She could tell us where she found that.
Yes.
Because those things fill us up, right? When we're watching those kinds of programs. So, and I'm not saying that you can't watch, other things. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying be very judicious about what it is you're filling up in your mind, because the mind can run away with things so very quickly. And especially when you have this kind of powerful energies that are surrounding this time period, you don't want to really go into, you don't want to fill yourself up with any more darkness than what you're already being barraged by. Right.
Now, thank you, Gabby. I Am is 10 years old, and you can find it on YouTube.
Okay.
I've discovered so much on YouTube lately. It's a wonderful resource.
Yeah. I love YouTube. Well, I sort of love YouTube. I watched this movie called The Social Dilemma. Everybody should watch that just to have an awakening of a sorts. And don't get scared by it, but it's profound. It's a profound movie. And it changed me, not because of fear, but it changed me because I realized I was partaking in a mad system, in a madness, a craziness. And if I'm going to participate in it, then I'm going to be in there eyes wide open, in creating positive streams of social media, and not the more negative stuff that goes on. So that's another good one to watch, just for purposes of realizing, how we're being manipulated. That's a good word.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yes, and Gabby's reminding us that I Am is so relevant to today. How often is it that films that are made like years, and books that are written years earlier, are suddenly very relevant? It's like, oh my goodness.
Yeah. Well, music, same thing, right? Because my husband loves classic rock, right? So I'm listening to a lot of the music that was out when I was a teenager, and he's 4 years older than me. So he was, graduating from high school listening to this music. And I listened to the lyrics, and I wonder how that applied to that time period, because really it applies to this time period that we're in. It's just so amazing to me that, it's like art almost is predictive in nature sometimes to what is happening, but not yet. So amazing stuff. I can't remember what song it was that I was listening to this morning. Same thing happened, and I'm like, whoa.
I keep running my mind through Love, Love, Love by the Beatles. I just think we need to spread it everywhere.
Yeah.
Now, Janet, Ursula wanted to know if you could look at her chart for the Halloween full moon to see what may be there to prepare for any more fires coming. Because America's had, the West Coast has had a lot of fires, haven't they?
There have been a lot of fires. I don't think that I would see fires in her chart, because unless it would affect her, like her being, having a fire. So I probably won't see that one, Ursula, but I would be happy. Why is my chart not looking right here? Nothing looks right all of a sudden. Hate it when that happens. Okay, so Ursula, hold on here while I pull that up. And then if it's okay with you, Annette, if you allow me to share, I can share the chart up on the screen. And
that will be fine. Just allow me to make that possible.
Yep, you do that while I find Ursula's chart here. And oh, Farrell, there you are.
Wait a minute. Why? Here we are. I think I've done sufficient.
Okay, well, when I get her chart up, which will be just another second here, then I will
Isn't it
do that.
amazing? Technology, it's incredible.
Isn't it? I love it. It makes our life so much easier on some levels and also scares the heck out of me other days.
And here we go. How wonderful you're able to do that.
Yep. So I might make sure I have Ursula's chart up. So for anybody listening at the moment, in your chart, if you know your own astrology chart, you'd want to look from about 6 to 13 degrees of the fixed signs for how this might affect you. So if you don't know what I mean by that, do not worry about it. But if you do know what I mean by that, then get your own chart out and take a look at what is going on in those degrees of your chart. So Ursula, you're in the clear, dear, at least here in the ninth house where the planet Uranus is already sitting here. It should be triggering maybe some, rise in your creative energy where maybe you feel like at some point here soon something's going to bust out of you that is mind-blowing or expansive in nature. On the opposite side where the sun will be sitting, you have both Venus and Neptune in your third house. So the sun will sit somewhere right here in the middle between the two at 8 degrees. And having just passed, you can see the sun is right here. So we can see visually, even on the chart, how we're gearing up, right, to get to this 8th degree of Scorpio. And what you'll have here in the third house is the potential, perhaps, of letting something go that's been dogging you in your mind, all of the questions maybe you've been asking, or any places where you've been storing old tapes, old patterns, old beliefs, let them go, right? Because if you're aligned with your values and your personal philosophy of the world, then that's all you need, right? That's all you need going forward here. You don't have to carry all of that baggage with you, especially because it's a releasing moon. Let it go. Now, I do see that it's likely going to trigger a T square in your chart, and I'll show you if you guys can see this red triangle here.
Sure.
That looks like it points right here at Venus and at Neptune. And T square is a highly charged transit, if you will, or configuration. So it means that there's likely a lot of blocks or challenges in that person's life. It's almost like when you see a T square in someone's chart, or you see a lot of red lines, and you can see a lot of them there, that this person has chosen a lifetime to really move ahead, that they want to release the old to be ready and prepared to go on to the new. So it's a highly challenged lifetime. Sometimes it gives you the opportunity to become extraordinary in your life because you're having to do so much work to overcome the obstacles. And one day, suddenly, you're out of the gate and you're racing for that finish line, and you're amazed at all that you've been able to accomplish. So T squares can work in our favor, but in the moment, T squares can be a little bit difficult. Now, what is enacted here in the opposition part of this T square for you is the South Node in your natal chart and the North Node in your natal chart. And they're both pointed by a square toward Venus and Neptune. I want to just say, Ursula, get out of your head, get out of your way, stay in your heart, and just live your life with full. Aren't you a projector? So you're living your life with love and openness and pleasure and fun until someone calls you in to help them do something or to work with them. Up until that time, you're just living your life by your heart, following your heart, right? Letting your heart lead you to the right people, to the right places, to the right events, to the right opportunities. So get out of your head, because that's where the square is pointed at, the third house, the mind. Get out of your head, get back into your heart, because that's what this opposition is all about, moving you toward Leo. You're moving toward that Leo North Node. That Leo North Node is all about doing what you love. Stop listening to what other people tell you you should be doing or shouldn't be doing, or how you should be believing or not. Just live in your heart. I know sometimes that's easier said than done, But that's why this is challenging you, because it's time. It's time to
And
do that.
yeah, and isn't that a message for everybody, Janet? We can
Yes.
all hop out of our heads and into our hearts.
Yes. It's not often that it's so obvious, though, in somebody's chart that that's the case. But when you look at this, it's just beautiful, right? This using the mind for creative endeavors, using the mind to compare and contrast and analyze and critically think. But then that's it, right? After that, any decisions come from a different place. They come from the heart, or they come from the emotions, or they come from the spleen. I can't remember what your human design looks like at the moment, but it certainly doesn't come from the mind. You do not find a pathway to good decision making in the mind. It's just an awareness center there. So I hope that answers your question. As far as fires go, this is, definitely not, this is more watery energy, Scorpio and earth energy. So if anything, I would expect maybe big rain events or floods, and perhaps even earthquakes, more than I would expect more fires. Although I'm not privy to California's chart, so I don't know for sure. But with that kind of devastation, if rains set in, it's likely a setup for floods like, what was it, Santa Barbara or Montecito, I think, had a couple of years back after the big fires. They had, I don't know how many inches of rain that dumped on them and created flash floods of mud that just took out people's homes. It was pretty tragic, even after having such a horrible fire season. Wasn't fun.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
Ursula is very grateful for your insights and grateful no forecast for fires. So
yeah, I don't see that at all. But I wouldn't put aside the possibility for earthquakes. But you live in California, that's always possible.
that's true.
Yeah.
Now, Gabby's wondering if you have time, could you look at her chart, please?
Certainly.
And Nikki Air says Aquarius, please, but I think she misunderstands and we will be out of time today. But Nikki, Janet needs information to be able to pull up your chart.
Gabby, is it
Forrester?
F-O-R. Okay, so I'm gonna have to go the other way. So hold on just one second, Gabby. I'll get it up. And I'm wondering. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, this is a good time to remind people that if they would like a reading when you're on here, that we need to have, or you need to have, their birthplace, date, and time, if possible.
Guess what? I don't have Gabby Forrester. Gabby, did you use a different last name? I think maybe what I had from you was for human design. Let me see if I can transcribe it quickly. How many minutes do we have left here, Missy?
Oh, we have a few. That's the beauty of this show. If you're free, we could go a little over.
Okay. So let me see if I can just transcribe it from over here. Because I'm pretty sure I thought I had done a regular chart for her as well, but there she is. So September 14.
And so,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, no, Nikki might like to keep that in mind. And this is a good time too, Janet, to say if people go to your website, which is www.living-astrology.com, you can request a human design chart from Janet. And that gives you a good idea. And then if you want a reading, a more in-depth consultation, Janet will do that for you too.
Right. And you can get a free astrology chart as well. So you have the option of doing, well, you can do both. You don't have to be limited at all. So
you're very generous.
Yeah, and it's simple to do, and so profound to have that access, especially when things like the full moon come up and you want to know more about it.
Now, Gabby loves the design chart, and her birth name was Gay.
That was her last name?
No, Gay was her Christian name.
I still didn't have anybody with the last name Forrester. So
Oh,
I'm putting her in here right now. So then I
all
did
right.
have her in
Then
my
I
other
messed up.
program though. Geraldton, there we go.
Now, Pauline is saying, my ascension teacher told us 100 to 31, turn off all distract. Oh, I see. Maybe she means 10:31. Turn off all distracting and do what heart desires. So totally in sync with what you've shared.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So thank you, Pauline.
All right, Gabby, just one moment here, girlfriend. I swear I am getting your chart up here. I'm just finishing that. And here we
I'm
go.
amazed at how you can multitask, Janet. I think it's fantastic.
Some days are better than others. Right now with Mercury retrograde, some days it feels like I'm pulling through like taffy to get to where I want to go. But here we are, Gabby's chart. Now, Gabby, did you want information about the full moon and where it's impacting you? Was that what she had requested, do you think?
I think that that's what she was after. Yes,
Okay.
I would think.
All right. So as we look at, here's Scorpio in your chart. So this is where the sun would be, right at about, let's see, there's 5 degrees. So right about here, right about right there. And there's no planet sitting there close to it. So you're pretty much in luck there. But let's look at the other side, the third house, very similar to Ursula's chart when we looked at hers, but also no planets sitting there. So let's look by the squares. We don't have anything in the squares either. So Gabby, for you, pretty much this is an open moon. That kind of means that there's no specific hit that's coming for you or specific change being requested of you other than by dynamic what has already been enacted, especially because the sun, having moved through Libra over the last 30 days, has created a wash of energy across your 8th house, the house of change, death, and transformation. So it's a house that is full of the potential for elevation to the next level. And the sun going through there would have highlighted your natal South Node, Venus, Mercury, your prenatal lunar eclipse, or what it is that you were here to teach, and also your natal Pallas Athena, which has pretty much been hit just in the past day or so. And Pallas Athena represents where it is that we might need to do some work in order to free ourselves up to do what we want to do with our lives. The doing, right? We're so used to, hearing, you're a human being and who do you want to be? But Pallas Athena addresses within us where it is that we are hesitant to do what it is that we know we need to do, what is going to serve the highest and best, how is it going to open up our hearts, our minds, our lives. We hesitate to do anything. So Pallas Athena says, free yourself from that garbage and live your life. So you might have been experiencing the potential for some changes in this very recent last month. And then the full moon perhaps offers you up the opportunity without any interference of other planets to release yourself from anything that has come to light through the transformational process of that 8th house, which also, by the way, during that period of time was by opposition, striking your 2nd house of earning power. So maybe there have been some issues for you around economy or money, earning power, resources, etc. And Mars is retrograde there in your chart. So he's been slowing things down and causing all of us to reimagine what's possible. That's the whole thing about Mars in retrograde is reimagine, right? Are the things you thought you want what you really, really want? Or is there something better? Something the universe is opening up? Like what is remaining open to you during these retrograde periods of time? Because what's remaining open is likely where the universe is trying to push you, like a little healer dog trying to push you into a certain pathway. And the more you resist, then of course, the more that Mars creates frustration or anger or upset. So what's opening up for you? Following that path, releasing yourself with that full moon from anything that has been standing in your way that, is no longer supporting you or useful to you. So hopefully that makes sense.
Go ahead. Now, interestingly, Janet, that Gabby made the comment that there's a lot of red on that chart. What does red on a chart mean?
Well, there's also a lot of blue on that chart, right? So ideally, and most often, I see charts where there is a nice balance between the blue, which should be the easier sort of benefic transits or connections between the planets, and the red, which are the more challenging transits or connections in the chart. So I didn't see that she had any more red than she should have. But if without the red, without those challenges, then we become quite lazy, right? We become like, oh, well, this is great. I don't really, I'm happy where I am. I don't need to grow and expand or do anything more. But the red lines represent the challenges that are going to come up between the planets there, and the struggle that we might have to get further than what we thought we could get. So we need both. So don't get caught up in, oh no, so much red.
Right.
Even if there is a lot of red, you could do it. Otherwise, you wouldn't have chosen this path in this life.
Right. Well, Gabby is absolutely, I know exactly what you were talking about. Thank you so much, Janet. Love you.
You're very welcome, Gabby.
And Pauline has a comment that I'm going to get to in a moment. I'm just going to suggest that Nikki Air does reach out to you via living-astrology.com, because she's very kindly put in her the date and the time question mark, and then Earth as where she was born. So we need a little bit of an update on that.
That's awesome, Nikki.
That's gorgeous.
Yeah, I do need a more specific point on Earth that you were born in order to make the chart really align correctly. So I need a city and a country, or a city and a state if you were born in the US. And then I can get that chart for you. So go to my website, www.living-astrology.com, and then request your free charts, and you can get that information. So,
and that goes for everybody. Anybody who's listening, watching, please reach out to Janet if you haven't in the past.
Yes, great.
And Pauline is saying, undefined throat human design, thinking of taking channeling classes, is that advised?
You know what, Pauline, that's totally off topic for tonight, but because I just so happened to have looked at your chart yesterday, I would say that's an absolutely great possibility for you, because Pauline and I discovered that we were born like exactly opposite from each other in the year. So mine's June 19th, her birthday is December 19th. So we're exactly opposite. So where I have the sun at gate 12, Pauline, you have the Earth at gate 12, and that's a gate that allows channeling from super consciousness or from cosmos, or who knows where it comes from, right? But there's often an ability to channel information in when you have a person in front of you. And I would say with an open throat, then that open throat is so wonderful to be able to speak what you're getting from that channeled information when you have the invitation to share that with someone. So yeah, do it. Go for it. And if it blows up, don't worry about it. It wasn't meant to be. But it should be a great experience for you, Pauline.
Lovely. Yeah. And Janet, you're certainly saying today for us the lovely reminder to get out of our minds into our hearts and to be discerning. You know, we hear lots and lots of things. How does it sit for us? And we're certainly coming into a very, very interesting time. My goodness me, by the time you and I speak again in 4 weeks' time, wow, I wonder what might have happened.
A lot will be said and done. And I can almost bet that when we meet again in a month, we still don't know who won the election here in the US.
Well, they're saying that it's going to take a long time to work out. So
it's a distinct possibility, but I'm putting out there, to the powers that be in the universe that this all happens with ease and grace, and is surprising in how quickly problems are resolved and how peacefully there is a transfer of power or an acceptance of whatever the results happen to be by all parties involved. So that's my intention. I'm setting it out there. I don't know if that is the case, but right, that's all I can do. I'm going to vote. I'm going to do that part, and that's really all I can do, unless I'm invited into, recount or something like that. I can't even imagine that happening. So yeah, stay in your heart, not your head. Be wise about what you take as truth. Be wise about what you say to other people about that truth that you believe is true, because other people can be so easily offended because they're not really, listening to our conversations, possibly. So they don't realize that they're under a spell. We're all under a spell at this point in time. And, we're awakening from that spell. And it takes time. Yeah. A couple of last things before we leave.
Yes.
November 3rd, Mercury turns direct. So that means we have a wishy-washy sort of day, as like the change of direction creates upheaval. So expect it, right? Expect craziness. On November 12th, the third of 3 Jupiter opposing Pluto transits that have been very catalyzing this year for us to really look at laws, like in the US, the whole Black Lives Matter. And in other countries, I'm sure they were grappling with issues around the laws that they have and the unequal application of those laws. So the third of 3 of those transits happens on November 12th. And the November 13th, Mars will finally turn direct. But we are not out of the woods yet, because Mars will sit at the gate 51 in our human design, which is the gate of shock, the gate of initiation into a new way of being, an awakening for all of us all the way through December. And then on November 28th, Neptune, who's been sort of behind the scenes, all of this time, guiding us to become more spiritual, to really look at what our beliefs are, to really kind of tease away some of the fogginess and the daydreaminess of the planet, turns direct and begins to move forward again in Pisces. And if we have been listening to our inner voice, if we have been paying attention to our intuition, this should not be a hard time at all. But if you did not listen to your intuition that told you to do something, it may become very obvious to you that you screwed up, right? That you should have done what you thought you should have done before Neptune turned direct. So it's always kind of opposite when Neptune turns direct, that it's different than the other planets. We want Mercury to turn direct, but Neptune was like, can you just stay in retrograde so I could be intuitive and listen and don't have to, deal with the ideal versus the real. But no.
Oh.
But it does give us the opportunity to express our spirituality, our faith, our optimism in the outer expression, the outer world. So it can still be a good thing.
Fantastic. All righty. Thank you, Janet. Thank you, everybody, for watching. May I remind you that Carol Ann Cross and Gabby Forrester will be joining you in about 75 minutes. So,
did you just make that up?
No. So, thank you. And hold on for the ride in this coming month. And Janet and I look forward to being together next month in November. I'll join you next week when my special guest is Beth, who was on here many years ago. So make sure you join us then. And
awesome.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Annette. Bye-bye, everyone.